Chair.
Thank you. Now,
Are you kicking off? Or
hello, Senator White. Did you have any questions? We have the right people at the table to start off with. Senator Canavan.
Okay, thank you.
Over to you.
I just wanted to start with, and I will come back to this later tonight with the relevant agencies, but you might have seen some reports recently in the media that the radar system at the Rockhampton Airport is not exactly working to specifications. So I ask, noting a clear conflict of interest from me. I'm a regular person who lands at the Rockhampton Airport. Is the department aware of these issues, and have they been in discussions with, I presume, Air Services Australia about these deficiencies?
Senator Marisa Purvis-Smith, Deputy Secretary, Transport Group. I might ask any colleagues if we've been in direct discussions about that particular issue. We're in discussions with the ASA on a regular basis. It is a matter for the ASA, though, rather than the department.
I get that, but this seems quite significant. Just to review, I just brought the article up. It's Rockhampton and Mackay airports. The Weekend Australian obtained detailed radar coverage logs. This was published on the 11th of February. Revealed 221 incidents of aircraft dropping off radars on approach to the two airports between July and January last year. July last year, obviously, in January this year. So are you aware of these reports, anyone in the department?
I'm aware of some of the reports. I'm not sure if my colleague is, but I'm not aware that we've engaged directly on that with the ASA. That is definitely a matter for the ASA themselves.
I get that, but this seems pretty concerning. So, Mr Wood, are you aware of the reports?
Senator Richard Wood, First Assistant Secretary, International Aviation, Technology and Services. I'm not aware of a specific report relating to Rockhampton or Mackay. I'm certainly aware of media commentary and other reports around service issues to do with Air Services Australia in some parts of the country, which we engage on, noting that the formal responsibility rests with Air Services, and to the extent there's any safety issues with the Civil Aviation Safety Authority.
So, just to be clear, you're not even aware of the reports of this?
Senator, I don't recall a specific report to do with Rockhampton.
It was on page 5 of the Australian on Saturday. I presume you have a media monitoring service. Headline, aircraft vanishing from second-rate radar.
I
the
didn't
department's
see.
not even aware of this problem.
So, Senator, I didn't see the Australian on the weekend, no. It may well be in our media clips, but I think...
Yeah. Presumably...
Excluded. You only get the Guardian? Oh, God. Is it true?
Presumably you would... your keyword searches would include Air Services Australia, radar, things like this. Wouldn't that article been flagged?
Senator, I didn't read the newspaper clips on Saturday morning. I've been doing my Senate estimates preparation, so that's one of the things I no doubt would see when I'm back in the press.
I am very shocked about this, to be honest. I mean, I'm not expecting you to trawl through the paper. How many people in your branch, Mr Wood?
In the division, we've got approximately 80 staff.
80 staff. I would have thought something mustn't be working very well when an article appears in a newspaper saying second-rate radar, there's been 221 incidents of aircraft dropping off the radar, and no one of those 80 people thinks it's worth saying, hey, maybe the FAS needs to know that this is an issue. Here's an article.
Well,
do you think you need to go back and check your processes within the department? This seems a shocking lack of accountability. As we said earlier, this is a matter for Air Service Australia. I get that. But you are the department in charge of them. If there's a major issue popping up saying there's a safety concern, I would have thought you'd at least be alerted to it rather than relying on a senator who has 4 staff, not 80.
Yes, of course, Senator, very few of these staff work directly on airspace-related issues. That said, we do look at the clips when we engage regularly with Air Services. These are the sort of things that may come up in our general engagement with Air Services.
Well, now that I've alerted you to it, I hope that someone does go back and try and get to the bottom of what the hell is going on. Can you tell me the difference, Mr Wood, between a terminal approach radar system and an ADS-B radar system?
Senator, the detailed technicalities would probably be better discussed with Air Services, but ADSB is essentially a system where aircraft have a transponder, I think is the terminology most people would be familiar with, which transmits the location of that aircraft out. There are different types of ADSB, some that transmit both the location out but also can take information in. This also makes these aircraft more visible to radar systems. Terminal approach radar is it's a radar system about airspace in the terminal area.
So visual, or presume there is a radar, like so with a terminal approach radar system is an actual radar.
Yeah,
but the issue seems to be here, they drop off that at some points on descent.
Yeah, so I'm not familiar with the precise issue here, but essentially airspace is there's different categories of airspace,
right.
But you'll have the immediate area around the terminal and those areas that are managed through the air traffic control system, and those areas of airspace that are managed from a centralised system elsewhere in the country.
So are you aware of any plans or inquiries being done on the need to potentially upgrade to ADSB at different airports around the country?
Well, I think Senator would probably need to more fully understand the details of the question, but ADSB is something that's on the aircraft. The government has had a program in place, so it was announced prior to the previous federal election, but has been continued by the current government for a subsidy for a rebate, 50% rebate on aircraft that are installing ADSB. It's long been mandatory for RPT aircraft, those carrying passengers, but it's now this rebate is supporting the expansion of ADSB to smaller general aviation and sport aircraft that may not have chosen to have ADSB on board previously.
Hang on, I'm a bit confused now, because in this article, which I appreciate you haven't had a chance to read, but in this article, and maybe I should table this article, I'll get it sent to, I'll have to bring it up, sorry, I don't have it physically, but I'll get it sent to the committee. In this article, an Air Service Australia spokeswoman says that that ADSB improvements are planned in the area, and she says, and I quote, an additional surveillance safety measure, ADSB, will be implemented at both Rockhampton and Mackay in the first half of 2024, once the required safety assessments have been completed and approved. That seems to me very clearly that there is a need or planned need to upgrade infrastructure at the Rockhampton and Mackay airports, whereas what I thought you just said is that the only investments are required in the aircraft. Am I?
Senator, I think some of these questions are of a technical nature, for which should be directed to Air Services Australia. However, ADSB, as I'm talking about, it is something that is on the aircraft. Radar systems may be differently able to take
but
up.
You're the area responsible for this, aren't you? I mean, is there someone behind you? I mean, surely you're 80 people.
You've got Air Services Australia who are responsible for this.
No, I know.
You've got them coming in at 9:30 tonight.
I get
why
that.
don't you ask them?
I know the program, but this is we've got planes disappearing from radar, and no one in the department seems to understand what radar is or can. I mean, it's not that hard. It wouldn't be that hard.
There's a whole government agency dedicated towards this.
Well,
giving up their time to come and answer
I'm
questions
very,
tonight.
very underwhelmed by the lack of urgency here on this. It sounds like these upgrades aren't due to take place till early 2024, and I appreciate you don't even know that there's a problem, but perhaps if you go away and look at that, because we obviously don't want any incidents. I'll get this letter tabled, I'll get the link sent to the Secretariat, and might hand over to Senator Kent.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, I just need to...
You're right. I think the Secretariat's looking for it right now, which will be great, and then you'll be able to have a read up, Mr. Wood. I just wanted to ask about the aviation white paper and to ask about the process. $7 million was budgeted to fund the delivery. Can you give us a breakdown of how that $7 million is being spent? Thanks, Ms Werner.
In relation to the
Ms.
detailed
Patterson?
breakdown, we can take that on notice. It is over 2 years. because the white paper process will be a 12 to 18 month process. But we can give you the details of that on notice, Senator.
It's taken 9 months. This was an election commitment. The terms of reference has taken 9 months. Is that usual for a white paper process?
I'm not sure. I don't have the history of white paper processes, unfortunately. The government went through their processes and agreed to terms of reference and released it recently on the 7th of February, I believe.
Who did they consult on the construction of the terms of reference?
We'd been working with the government of the terms of reference. It was an election commitment, and the government made a. It wasn't a separate consultation process on the terms of reference. The government decided on the terms of reference to be able to release it as the basis for consultation.
Okay, gotcha.
And in terms of the time frame, the government decided that it wanted to release the white paper in mid-2024, and we worked back from there. So it's wrong to characterise it as 7 months of delay. We are timing the process that will follow in order to enable us to deliver the white paper in a predetermined time frame.
Working backwards. Okay. The terms of reference then were developed in the department, the terms of reference for the consultation, rather than having a discussion paper, were developed in the department and sent up to the Minister's office?
Was in the department. We consulted with some other government agencies, including CASA, and as my colleague Ms Werner will be able to take you through a bit more detail.
Stephanie Werner, First Assistant Secretary, Domestic Aviation and Reform Division. The initial draft terms of reference was developed by the department based on the government's election commitment. The terms of reference was then shared across the public service with PM&C, Treasury, Finance, Department of Climate Change, DFAT, Austrade, Home Affairs, Department of Industry and Defence, and portfolio agencies Air Services, CASA and ATSB for comment. The draft terms of reference were then provided to the Minister, who then sought agreement to them from the Prime Minister.
So did CASA or Air Services Australia add anything to the terms of reference?
Unfortunately, Senator, I don't have that level of detail with me.
Okay.
We can take it on.
Thank you. In 2009, the then Prime Minister Rudd's National Aviation Policy White Paper, there was an article printed on the 5th of February in 2010, which I'll quote from, which said, "With dust settled after the pre-Christmas release of the paper, criticism of the document's lack of vision is bubbling to the surface from several quarters. The Australian Aviation Association Forum this week released a communique. It then labelled the white paper little more than a description of the past and present initiatives. Has the department, in developing that terms of reference, taken on board previous criticism of aviation white paper policies and consulted more broadly than, I guess, internally around the terms of reference and gone to Australian Airports Association, Australian Business Aircraft Association or the others?"
Senator, I think, as Ms Werner has outlined, she outlined the internal process and who we consulted with. I think also we discuss and have meetings with the aviation sector on a very regular basis and have been talking to them about where the white paper process, about the issues that they think that they would like to see as part of our regular stakeholder engagement with the sector. So that will have gone into the terms of reference that we drafted. However, also the terms of reference was very heavily specified based on the election commitment.
Yeah, absolutely, as I can imagine it should be. There seems to be individuals and organisations can make submissions until the 10th of March. What was the basis for the decision of submissions to be only a 30-day period?
Senator, the submissions themselves is a 30-day period, but the consultation process will be much longer than that, and we will have a full consultation plan that will be a series of meetings as well. There'll be a range of ways that industry and the sector can input into the white paper and the green paper before that. And actually, Ms Werner might have some more detail about when our consultations will begin.
Thank you.
Thanks, Senator. So the timing around the submissions in response to the terms of reference is based on, as the Secretary mentioned, the need to work back from the Green Paper's release in the middle of the year. So there's 30 days for stakeholders to make submissions on the terms of reference or the issues raised in the terms of reference. From early March, we'll be holding a number of focus group meetings in capital cities around Australia, as well as virtually, in order to allow a wide range of participants to be involved. And then that consultation, as well as the submissions that we receive from stakeholders on the terms of reference issues, will feed into the Green Paper, which will then be released in the middle of the year. Following the release of the Green Paper, there will be another opportunity for submissions and consultations before we start to draft the White Paper.
Right, gotcha. There's been some concern, I guess, around the terms of reference that there's no reference to air freight, airports, airport regulations, reducing red tape, etc. Do I take it from the comments today that those issues are not precluded from being discussed within the White Paper?
I think that's correct, Senator. We will go out to consult, and in particular in terms of the initial submissions against the terms of reference. If, for example, submissions are made on particular issues that are outside the terms of reference, we can look at that and see whether what process that can go into, and whether it may well go into the White Paper and the Green Paper process.
So would you appreciate that airline profitability is critical to a sustainable air transport aviation industry, but it's not mentioned specifically in the terms of reference?
I think the terms of reference are broad enough to include those, and including things such as airport development and aircraft. So I think that it is broad enough to encompass
so airport development, planning, security.
The range of issues that they would like to.
I'm just trying to fill in the gaps that have been raised with me about the limited nature of the terms of reference as they're. And I appreciate there's a longer, more iterative process to go through as we head towards a Green and White Paper, but I would hate people to think that they couldn't.
No, we would encourage people to put in submissions about the issues which are of importance to them, and then through the subsequent stages, including the Green Paper, those are able to be identified and picked up.
And just confirming these terms of reference came out of the department, there was no consultant engaged to develop them?
That's correct, Senator.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to go to Brisbane aircraft noise. From the department's perspective, knowing Airport Services Australia, we'll be asking you. Mr McClure.
Phil McClure.
Can you report on what progress has been made to establish a permanent consultative body on aircraft noise with respect to the Brisbane Airport?
I might start off and then pass to my colleague. So the department has been engaging with stakeholders, including the Brisbane Airport, around the various models of a permanent forum. We also wanted to make sure that the PIR process had gone through its process to see what recommendations had come out of that. We are in the process of considering and finalising the options that are available for a permanent forum, and Mr McClure might have some more detailed information.
Thank you. Phil McClure, Assistant Secretary of the Airports Branch. So we had the previous forum running through parallel with the Air Services post-implementation review, which the final report came out towards the end of December. And the forum continued on through that process, and we've been working with inside government, with ourselves, Air Services and Brisbane Airport around the permanent forum. We've developed, what terms of reference might look like for agreement within government before that's settled, and some announcements around the methodology for determining who the community members might be. Okay,
so you've been talking inside the department you've been talking to the agency that the community feels is responsible for this, and the Brisbane Airport, which the community is also, you know, I get the emails that Catherine King gets as the Shadow Minister. So very much a matter of community concern. But we still haven't moved any closer to a permanent consultative committee.
We've certainly developed options for what that committee might look like, and it's at a high level. The post-implementation review has thrown up a whole range of packages and measures that will be predominantly taken forward by Air Services Australia. So Air Services and their engagement with the new forum will be critical, which is why we're engaging with themselves. And again, Brisbane Airport will be critical to the feeding information back and forth to the community group. So we've kept those, and the forum may go to. We need some industry support for the forum.
We're getting somewhere, Mr McClure. So the options have been developed of what this might look like. I'm hearing the departments presented them to the Minister, Air Services Australia and Brisbane Airport, and said, let's go. Where's the hold-up? This is just a permanent consultative committee that the community's been screaming for a long time. Where is the hold-up?
Oh, not necessarily a hold-up. As I said, the previous forum was in place until the end of December, and it's been a bit of an iterative process going back and forth on what the new forum might look like, and it's designed to kick off at the same time that Air Services will be kicking off the sort of next phase of their work post-implementation.
Given Air Services' well-known constraints, shall we say, why would you link your minister and this very important consultative committee to them delivering on something? Wouldn't you just get it done?
I think it's fair to say, Senator, that we have been progressing that while we've been waiting for the PIR to be released. We wanted to know what was in and what recommendations were in the PIR to make sure that the options that we were considering and looking at were consistent with what the PIR was going to be recommending.
But what I'm hearing, Ms Purvis-Smith, is that you are now waiting for Air Services Australia to do something before you do what we all know needs to be done, which is a permanent consultative committee set up.
I'm not sure Mr McClure said that.
No, I've misunderstood that. I'm happy to be corrected.
No, we're not waiting for Air Services necessarily. We're just, as I say, we've just been working within government on what that those final terms of reference will look like, and then we need to, as I say, agree an approach to the way the community members will be identified, and the committee will meet. But I guess the Air Services link is that what the community group will fundamentally be doing in the first instance is looking at the way the measures that have been identified in the post-implementation review are being delivered, and that will require engagement with Air Services.
So the options for that are sitting with the Minister. You've done that work, it's up with the Minister.
I think we'd say, Senator, it's an iterative process, as Mr.
No,
McClure said.
I appreciate that.
So
my question is, the work's been done within the department. Is the brief on the options with the Minister or not?
We're engaged in regular contact with the Minister's office, revising the terms of reference or refining the terms of reference.
So she doesn't have the terms of reference yet?
I think that we would need to ask the Minister whether she herself has them.
Okay, the brief's gone to the office.
So I think, as
my
Ms. Werner,
question
is that we have been working with the Minister and the office in particular. It is an iterative process, refining the terms of reference, looking at the various options, and we have provided, I think we can say, briefing up to the Minister, but it is an iterative process to make sure that we.
And you've got to get Brisbane Airport on board, Air Services Australia, to get it all sorted. I just wanted to go to some of the concerns around the Brisbane Flight Path Community Alliance have raised. Are you aware of how exercised this community is about the noise in the flight path, and that there has been an increase in complaints over recent period?
We are aware of the issues and concerns being raised by the community.
Yep, and the complaints have been increasing?
As you're aware, Senator, Air Services more directly monitor those complaints. We certainly saw some figures that had been presented from the previous estimates. It's fair to say that with the post-implementation review just starting, and Air Service will give you more details, the flight paths have not changed since over that period. Different modes get flown in different seasons, and obviously with international coming back, the number of flights is upticking all the time, but Air Service will be more accurately be able to describe the pattern of the complaints.
So I'm just wondering, there's 160 in Air Services Quan 108, 169 suburbs across Greater Brisbane are negatively affected by excessive noise pollution from the Brisbane Airport. Has the department done any detailed modelling of an assessment of property devaluation as a result of this noise pollution?
I'm not aware that we've done that.
No, we haven't done any assessment of property values.
Okay. Would you consider working with affected community members as part of that consultative group, even in its permanent or in its current form, to actually look at that work? This is a significant concern that's been raised with me.
I think we'd take that on notice. I think it would depend on what the community forum will look like, what the terms of reference will be and what the options are going forward, but we will work within that governance arrangement going forward.
So my understanding, there is a forum running now. Is this something, while we're waiting for the permanent forum to be set up, that could be discussed in the current forum?
No, sorry. The previous, the BAPAF as they were called, they ran basically alongside the post-implementation review period that Air Services undertook. So their final report came out around the same time that the final report.
So there's no forum right now?
Well, there has been an enduring community forum attached to Brisbane Airport, BACAG, which is similar to all the federal leased airports. They all have their community aviation consultation group, so that group continues on. The two specific forums that related to the PIR are now as the election commitment, but there's been, as I say, a month between those being one completing it and one getting back underway. So,
but at the moment there's nothing?
Well, there's as I say, there's...
Other than the Brisbane Airport thing. I'm talking about your engagement with the local community.
We attend and are part of that Brisbane Airport Community Aviation Consultation Group. That continues on. That continues on.
As part of that group, would the department undertake to look at modelling property devaluation as part of the the noise pollution?
I think we'd take that away and consider that. I mean, obviously we go to those meetings and we will consider any issues that come up with those meetings, and we will also...
This has been a direct request of me on behalf of these affected communities to raise that with you and to seek your advice that you would consider doing that level of work. The Community Alliance is also wanting to ask if the department has considered establishing a compensation scheme to be made available to homeowners who've been experiencing the devaluation of their properties in excess of 10%.
I'm not aware that we've been considering anything like that, Senator.
Would you... I would really request that you, in your engagement in the current and future forums, look at both compensation and modelling of property devaluations, because the claims that have been put to me is that it's in excess of 10%.
Same topic.
And there's been a lot of concern that Minister King has refused to meet with this community. Is that correct?
I've seen a press release to that, but I don't know anything more than what I've read in the press release. So that might need to be directed to the Minister.
Assistant Minister, you're a resident of Brisbane. This issue would be no surprise to you, I'm sure. It was it's been a key issue for a long time. Community members are very, very exercised about the fact that the Minister had her Chief of Staff write back to them and that she could not actually meet with them in person. Were you aware of this?
I wasn't aware of that, and I'm happy to take on notice and try and provide some more information about that,
Thank
Senator
you.
Mackenzie. Just if I can attempt to be helpful, at the risk of trying to be helpful. The terms of reference are currently being finalised, and I expect the Minister will have more to say shortly about the establishment.
Thank you. That is very helpful in actuality.
Are you still on Brisbane Airport, Senator Mackenzie? Because Senator White has some questions.
Yes, of course. No, I've finished with Brisbane Airport.
Okay.
But, yeah.
If I can go to Senator White, give you a break for a second, Senator White.
Thanks. Do you know how many jobs are connected with Brisbane Airport? So both directly at the airport and also associated businesses?
I'm not sure I've got that figure in front of me. There's certainly something we can find out relatively quickly, but no, I don't have that number in front of me, I'm sorry.
So what I'm saying associated with, so the associated businesses, that's couriers who do deliver for transport. If you could give us the figures, both directly who is employed there, so people who would be employed directly with aircraft flights, but also those ancillary ancillary jobs, that would be really useful. And, did I get correct that the noise complaints there has been, it's Air Services who can give us sort of directly information on sort of the timing of when the noise complaints are? Yeah, and also you were asked a question about any work that had been done on the devaluation of property because of noise. This noise has been around for a while, hasn't it? It's, there's been complaints for a number of years. Am I correct about that?
I understand that's
So the new runway in Brisbane opened in mid-2020, and then there's certainly an increase in noise complaints from Brisbane residents with the new flight paths being flown with the new runway.
So in the lead up to the development of that new runway, did the previous federal government do any work on what the devaluation of the devaluation of properties in the vicinity would be because of the new runway and the increased air traffic?
I would have to take that on notice, Senator.
Could you do that? It'd be interesting to know. And the lead-up process to putting in a new runway, you can't just sort of say, I'm going to put in a new runway, do you? There's a significant amount of consultation that goes into that, including with your department. Am I correct about that?
That's correct. There's a range of processes around master planning and major development project planning and approvals that has to go ahead beforehand.
And also where the what the flight plans are going to be like, what the demand is like, what new airlines are going to be there. All of that would have been taken into account because the existing infrastructure was not significant enough to take what the demand looks like. Am I correct about that?
A range of issues, including those, will have been taken into account as to whether there was demand for a new runway, and a range of issues needed to be taken into account, including going through the EIS process.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I just also think quickly before I go back to Senator Mackenzie, and I'm looking forward to hearing from Air Services because they will have every single flight of every day of every minute. Yeah. They would have monitors in the ground. They would know exactly where those complaints are coming from, so we could thrash it out a little bit better there, because this committee is not what's the word I'm looking for? We've done a couple of inquiries on this over the years in different states. So I'd be keen to hear from Air Services myself.